So Berserk is a very dark and complex series, and it explores a bunch of different self-improvement related topics, such as like betrayal, vengeance, friendship, obsessions, and a bunch of different things from your mind. And I think I wanted to make this video just to kind of go over the different things, give my own thoughts on them, and just talk about the different stuff that happens in Berserk, and then comment on whatever I want to comment on. But anyways, let's get to it. So the consequences of obsession. So Guts is driven by this obsession for revenge, for all the things that happen to him. And because of that, he ends up being very destructive in his outcomes. I think the thing we can take from this is, instead of having obsession over something, you have to check yourself. Like, it's okay to be a little bit obsessed with something to achieve things, but at the same time check yourself when you're being too obsessed and to achieve something and it's bringing destruction into your life. I think that's the thing we can learn from Guts, is just avoiding destruction in your life. And it's important to balance your goals and desires, so you find this balance in life, and in general just find balance in every area of your life, because that's usually when you find the best things, is in balance. Now Guts is kind of a lone wolf, but still he values friendships and connections, so he forms with the group in the series, and he has his kind of history and ups and downs with the group, but he is obviously a lone wolf for the most part. He's very individualistic, but the most important thing we can learn is it's important to have connections and to have people to support you for your emotional well-being, as well as, I suppose, for personal growth and development. I would say it's important to have friendships and connections. Now I think if we adapt this to our modern society, we have that in a very lacking way. A lot of people are very isolated, so it's a very big thing we should consider in our daily lives, is for personal growth, is connections. And at the end of the day, when you're at the end of the day, if you're on your deathbed, what you want is connections, not material wealth. So resilience and perseverance. So with Guts, he faces a lot of things throughout his life, where it's like challenges, traumas, and different betrayals throughout his history. And it's this ability to persevere and have this resilience that's like, I think the most core message of Berserk is having that resilience, perseverance, kind of being that struggler, going through that struggle even when you don't want to. And like, life often throws these curveballs at you, and learning to persevere through it is very important. And I think that's the core message we can learn from it, the whole show, anime, manga, whatever series. That's the most important thing. And oftentimes I think we need to remind ourselves of that, and I do too. Like, I'm not perfect, nobody is, and everybody has their down moments. But even if you are against like overwhelming odds, the most important thing you can do is just persevere, because usually it gets better when you do, if you're putting in the effort to be the best you can. Being nihilistic and defeatist is not really gonna get you anywhere anyway, so you might as well persevere if you want something out of your life. During the series, they also explore a lot of the choices and accountability you have to take when you make choices. So there's a lot of characters that make choices during the series, and Guts has to make a lot of choices and sacrifice, and you have to take accountability for every action you take. That's the thing we can learn from the series, is despite all the things that happened the way they happened, they were a series of choices by either the group leader, Griffith, or Guts, and so on, and all of these choices compound into something, and you have to take accountability for that. And that's the most important thing we can learn from that part in the show. Now, overcoming trauma. Now, Guts' past is filled with a lot of stuff that happened to him that was bad. So I think the thing we can learn from this, because he's continually struggling and trying to heal in his journey from his past, we can learn from this. Even whatever happens to us in our life, there's always time that will heal anything bad. So just keep going on the journey, do your best, keep yourself healthy, and that way you'll eventually heal from anything that you have a traumatic experience from. And that way you can reach that point in your life where you accept everything and you can move on. Of course, trauma is kind of a part of everybody's lives. Some people don't have them, of course, but I'd say that's a minority. Everybody has something they're going through, and that's part of life, to heal and move on. And that's the thing we can learn from Guts, is just keep going. Now, another thing is Guts is striving for a wild sense of purpose in his life, because he doesn't want to feel this emptiness, and it's a very central theme in our chaotic world and the chaotic world of Berserk, and it can be a very powerful motivation when you find that sense of purpose. And I think a sense of purpose is very broad term, and it can come from a lot of things. Maybe it's family, job, whatever, hobby. So just figure it out for you, but the main thing we can learn is to strive for that and find meaning for ourselves. And I think meaning and purpose is a very talked about topic. I've talked about it a lot, and these days I think a lot of people lack it, and it's quite sad. It turns them into this dark mode of themselves where they're doing everything according to their base desires and living life in a primal level instead of living at a higher plane. But the way you get out of that is finding something more meaningful than just your primal level of being. Now, Berserk also goes through the dark side of humanity, which is human nature, greed, and everything else, in usually sinful activities that are bad for you. So it can serve as a reminder to acknowledge and work on one's own sense of, like, if you feel like you've kind of done these like sinful things or things that are bad for you, it can kind of give you this perspective. When you watch the series and you watch Berserk, you see Guts go through all this and see all this stuff, like dark stuff. It can make you reflect on your own humanity as well as humanity in general, and what you're doing to yourself and others, and see how it affects things. And recognizing your own negative flaws and working on them actively. You know, like whether it's betrayal, greed, cruelty, whatever. And just seeing how you can improve those aspects in yourself. Now, Guts is portrayed as a very skillful and strong warrior, but at the same time you have to balance strength and vulnerability. So there are times when you need to be strong, and there's times when you need to be vulnerable, because the vulnerability can lead to being able to relate to other people more and allow you to connect and open up to other people. On the other hand, being strong can also help with that, but it can also, sometimes you have to be strong to face adversity and push through. And it allows for better personal growth when you can balance these two and know when to use one or the other. And you can control yourself fully, and so you're not too much on the other end of each spectrum. And that way you can achieve, again, a balance in your life. In general, Berserk offers this sense of insight into the human experience that a lot of different series don't go into so much. Perhaps like Bucky, the series goes into it a little bit, but I think Berserk is a bit different. It just encompasses the human existence very well in a subtle way. Well, not so in a subtle way, but it's not like meant to be self-improvement inherently, but that's what it kind of comes down to, is human existence and improving. So, you know, through all these different things like consequences of choices, connection, friendship, group, individuality, and all these different topics, I think we can take a lot from the series and learn a lot from it. And life is very complex, and there's a lot of adversity and different things, and you have to take that into account when you live your life. And I think so series like this are a good reminder to us that whatever happens in our life, there's always a way to struggle through it and become our best selves.